Welcome to this session of business registrations powered by Leloma Legal and just Innovation. My name is Leloma Legal and I'll be focusing on business registrations in South Africa, the basics that any business would be required to know. In terms of introductions, I'm an admitted attorney of the High Court in South Africa with overall 10 years experience in the industry. I'm also a legal technology and innovation specialist, council member of the University of the Free State. I'm currently a candidate for a Master's in Legal Technology at IE University in Spain. But more importantly for today's session, I'm one of the co-founders of a legal tech startup called Leloma Legal, which offers legal services for small businesses in South Africa and Lesotho. I'm also a speaker specifically on legal tech innovation, having also authored a book with Juicer Publishers in South Africa entitled Legal Tech Startups and Innovation, Changing Business Law Firm Models One Innovation at a Time. Our biggest feat probably has to be at Leloma, having assisted startups and small businesses, not only here in South Africa, but in Lesotho, with our fastest and most efficient time from request to delivery, with a document being received in under 4 minutes. For purposes of today, I'm just going to start quickly with a disclaimer that both this presentation and the slides that are occupied here are protected by copyright laws. And in terms of Copyright Act 98 of 1978, no part of this presentation or slides may be reproduced or transmitted in any form, including photocopying, recording, or so forth, without prior permission from myself being the author. This presentation and slides are purely for educational purposes and do not constitute legal advice. The author, myself, and Leloma Legal and Legit do not accept any liability or loss or damage that may be occasioned as a result of the reliance of any persons on the information contained in this presentation or slides. So what we're going to focus through today is really on 5 assets that I thought would be important for any business owner or African entrepreneur who wishes to enter into South Africa. So the first one would be choosing the right business vehicle within which to navigate your business in South Africa. The second being our framework and our commission that handles business registrations. And thirdly will be the different types of registrations available for you as a foreign national. Fourth, I'll just quickly unpack the documents that are required in order for you to actually register, and tax considerations with whatever option that you choose. So first of all, in South Africa, there's a myriad of ways within which you can run a business. So you can do so either through a company or a CC, which is called a closed corporation. Even though new closed corporations can no longer be registered, the ones that have been registered before the 1st of May 2011 are still operational. Now, the Companies Act has made provision that you could actually change from a CC to a company in terms of the Companies Act. So this is also available for people who want to conduct business. The third way within which you can conduct business is through a partnership. This can either be limited or unlimited. Fourth is through a business trust, and lastly is through the sole proprietorship. Now, all of these different business vehicles available to you obviously carry their own different legal implications. But what has been prominent, and not only from foreign nationals who enter into South Africa, but even for us when we run businesses, the most effective and probably used way in order for us to actually engage and enter into business relationships and start a business, it's through starting a company. This is traditionally privately owned with a limited liability. And when you register a company, it's considered separate from your personal capacity. So they assume the moment you're registered and recognized in terms of CIPC, which is the commission which we'll deal with further, automatically your company assumes a separate legal identity from yourself, meaning that it can earn income, it can incur tax, it can sue, it can also be sued. And should you want to take your business venture further, there's also that option, but obviously there's certain requirements that you need to fit should you want to trade publicly on the JSE, that is the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. In terms of what governs South African laws from a holistic point, we're governed by a common law. We find our roots in Roman Dutch law, and we're also governed by statutes and case law and customary law. So those are the four key rules of law that govern more specifically how we transact. But what is relevant for purposes of today is actually a statute which governs the registration and functioning, or rather operations of a business in South Africa, that being the Companies Act 71 of 2008. So in terms of registrations, we have a digitized process of registering a business. So what you do, you go to CIPC, which is the commission, so the Companies and Intellectual Property Commission. So they house literally every single part of intellectual property or company. So if you wish to register a new company, whether you are locally or if you're new, this would be your first point of contact. Everything is done electronically. So you submit it online through the portal. You make payments also through the portal. They really try to simplify the process. And so you'll find some of the incorporation documents, for example, your memorandum of incorporation, there are templates already on the system itself that it generates upon registration. But obviously this comes with its own caveats in the sense that because it's not customized to suit your specific business, sometimes it can be quite problematic going forward. Should you want to, transact differently or want to maintain, especially considering, the shareholders agreement and the MOI in terms of how actually the corporate governance of the business functions. So we often advise at times to actually, even though this is done online and you can actually facilitate it, it's often encouraged that those types of legal incorporative documents are customized in order to suit their specific legal needs and whatever internal structure that they have decided. So instead of just having a document or filing through CIPC that says that there are two shareholders with X amount of shareholders in the company, having an additional, let's say, customized shareholders agreement also clears up the type of relationship that these two shareholders have. But just for context, so CIPC, that is the Companies and Intellectual Property Commission, is an agency of the Department of Trade and Industry in South Africa. It was established in terms of the Companies Act, and it in itself really serves as a public administration platform. As I indicated, this is where any form of registered business or company is housed, and the intellectual property part comes through for purposes of registering your patents and trademarks. So should you wish to register some form of intellectual property, that is also the platform that you go through. So this is where you also sift through the search and find out if what you're trying to patent or trademark already exists or doesn't. So that's where the entire process takes place. Another thing that you need to take into cognizance is, should you want to move your operations, let's say from Uganda to South Africa, so you have three types of options available for you. So the first option is starting from scratch. So you would register a new company. That in itself usually takes 7 days, but we found with practice over the years that they've actually become so efficient that it can actually take a day. So if you submit in the morning, by the close of business, your company would have been registered. The second option would be a subsidiary company registration. This usually takes about 25 working days. This is purely because of the additional information that it requires and the verification process that needs to take place. So we'll briefly unpack, in the next slides in terms of, the type of documents that are required. And this actually accounts for the time frame. But all of this is still done online. And the third option that you have is registering through a shelf company. So literally, as it states, shelf company. So it already exists, hasn't been operational. So all you're literally doing is just transferring ownership from one person to another. That process usually takes 7 days. Now, the best option, and it really depends on what you're trying to achieve in South Africa. So usually the best option also for purposes of taxes and brand continuity, it's either through the subsidiary company registration, so that actually the holding company in the main business of operation, that is your country jurisdiction, actually will end up carrying the costs instead of creating a new company, which would obviously carry its own legal obligations. In terms of what is required, so for a new company registration, so you need a passport copy, South African address, and contact information. And there's a certain filing fee that is applicable in this specific instance. And then what is important to note here, even though this process is actually quite quick, the copies that are provided need to be certified. But because usually, for foreign nationals, we often recommend that they actually be notarized. So that will be the best option for you when you submit them. And these are still done online. So in addition to these documents, there will be additional CIPC provided forms that will need to be completed. So in terms of the second type of company registration, that takes 25 working days. You'd still need, your passport copy, your address, contact information. But in addition to all of that, you'd also need your certificate of incorporation and a copy of the MOI. So this also needs to be notarized. And the other condition is that it either needs to be in English or in one of our other official languages. This is purely so that obviously when verification takes place, that it is understood. So if the document is in another language, that would, that might cause a problem. So it either need to be, transcribed, translated, and verified in terms of the translation and so forth. So it's a whole process, but it is possible. And the third option is a shelf company registration. In terms of the required documents, it's still the same as when you're registering a new company. For purposes of tax, so there are a couple of taxes that are applicable when you're running a business in South Africa. So that first one seeks to taxes on employment. So if you're going to employ someone in South Africa, you're going to pay what we call PAYE, that is pay as you earn. But also through your business venture, you will be liable to pay VAT and capital gains tax, especially if there are any property transactions involved. And if there are any group affiliates that are also bound by some form of tax implication, you'll also be liable for that. And if there's some form of exporting and importing of your business transactions that you're trying to conduct, there will also be some customs duties that is applicable. Now, what South Africa has done, though, is enter into double tax treaties. This is to combat that problem where someone is earning, an income in one country or in more than one country, or business is running more than one country, but it's still taxed either on the same scale, but twice. So in order to actually prevent that, they entered into a couple of treaties, and luckily